The morning started out like any other. Crisp air, coffee in hand, and that slow, careful walk to my car. The one that comes with a bad leg and a metal brace that squeaks when the weather turns cold. The sun was just crawling over the rooftops of our cookie-cutter suburb, casting long shadows across rows of identical SUVs. My blue handicap placard swayed gently from the rearview mirror, always perfectly displayed because around here, the HOA can fine you for practically breathing wrong if you give them a reason. Except this morning, someone decided my spot wasn't mine anymore, right there. Gleaming under the early light like it was on display, sat a bright red Corvette, polished to the point of arrogance. It looked like an apology, but it was never actually intended to be made. Parked squarely in my clearly marked handicap space, I just stood there, staring for a full minute, waiting for reality to catch up. But it didn't. That was my space, the one that spared me from limping half a block with my cane, and now it was taken. And then I noticed the plates. The little high school football decal on the bumper, of course. It was Karen's son's car, Karen, our neighborhood tyrant and self-appointed president of the HOA, the same woman who once left a note on my door, claiming my wind chimes were audibly offensive. She treated our cul-de-sac like her own personal kingdom, so I did what any reasonable person would do. I took a photo of the Corvette, another of the handicap sign, and then slipped a polite note under the wiper. This spot is reserved. Please respect accessibility designations. Some of us actually need them. 10 minutes later, I was halfway back to my apartment when I heard that voice, sharp, nasal, and shrill enough to shatter glass. "Excuse me, did you leave this note on my son's car?" There she was, Karen, arms crossed, floral robe tied tight, like a general ready for war. "Yes," I said evenly. "He parked in a handicap spot," she scoffed dramatically. "He was only there for 5 minutes. You don't own the space. HOA rules don't apply to temporary guests." "Handicap laws apply to everyone," I said. Her smile faded, her tone turning icy. "You really should watch your tone with the HOA board, sweetie. We take complaints very seriously." Something about the way she said it sent a chill down my spine. That night, I found an anonymous note taped to my door. "Don't make trouble. This community values harmony." And just like that, the game had begun. The next morning, the sound of an engine jolted me awake, that same Corvette revving obnoxiously. I pulled back the curtain and watched as Karen's son, Ryan, backed out halfway, then pulled right back in again. He looked straight up at my window and smirked. Subtle, real subtle. By the time I made it outside, coffee in hand, patience running thin, Karen was already out front watering her hydrangeas, which for her was just code for spying on the neighbors. "Morning," I said, forcing a polite smile as I passed. "Good morning," she replied sweetly, that tight, brittle smile that could curdle milk. "Oh, I noticed your little complaint reached the HOA inbox. You must be very dedicated to following the rules." I stopped walking. "You're the HOA president, Karen. You know parking in a handicap spot without a permit is illegal, right?" Her smile didn't even flicker. "It's not illegal if it's brief," she said smoothly. "And besides, Ryan was visiting me. Technically, I could file a complaint against you for harassment." I blinked, stunned. "For pointing out a law?" She tilted her head and tapped her temple. "Tone," she said. "It's all about tone." By noon, I got the email. Notice of community violation. Subject line bold and formal like a legal threat. Apparently, my unauthorized signage, meaning the official city-issued handicap post, was now under review for compliance. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just being defensive. She was retaliating, so I called the HOA office directly, skipping her entirely. Luis, the actual administrator, a kind guy, sounded exhausted, picked up. "Sir, we've received a few complaints from Mrs. Sanders, Karen, about your parking area," he sighed. "But she doesn't have the authority to remove city signage." "You're fine?" "Good," I said flatly. "Because I'm not moving it." That night, I heard laughter outside. Teenagers, loud, careless, and probably drunk. I peeked through the blinds. Ryan and his friends were leaning against the Corvette, still parked illegally, beers in hand. "Nice sign, dude," one of them yelled, pointing at my handicap placard. I felt that familiar anger rise, not the explosive kind, but the slow, steady burn that spreads like a fuse waiting for a spark. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. If the HOA wouldn't enforce the rules, maybe karma would. The air the next morning had that kind of stillness that feels like a warning, the kind that settles in right before something breaks. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see who would flinch first, and there it was again. That same bright red Corvette, lounging in my handicap spot like it was born there. Karen was out front, pretending to trim her rose bushes, snipping at air, watching me limp toward my car through the hedge. I could practically feel her smirk. "Morning," she sang, not bothering to look up. "You might want to move your trash bins closer to the curb. HOA regulations say." I cut her off. "You might want to tell your son the law says that's my parking spot." She gave a short, sharp laugh. "You're becoming quite the complainer, you know that?" "Not very neighborly," I smiled back. "Just very observant." That afternoon, while she hosted one of her HOA strategy meetings, which, from the sound of the giggles and clinking glasses, mostly involved gossip and rosé, I got to work. I called the city's non-emergency parking enforcement line. The woman on the other end, Gina, had that calm, efficient tone of someone who'd heard it all before. "Yeah," she said. "We've had a few calls about that address already. We'll send someone out tomorrow." "Perfect," I told her, but deep down I wanted something more than a ticket. Not revenge exactly, just balance. A little reminder that the world still had consequences. So that evening I left a small handwritten sign by the edge of my space. Reserved. Illegally parked vehicles will be towed. It wasn't a threat, just a statement of fact. By nightfall, the Corvette was back again. I watched from behind the curtain as Ryan stumbled out of the car, drunk and laughing with a friend. They kicked my little sign over, one of them even spitting on it. Karen's porch light flicked on. "Boys, keep it down!" she hissed. But her tone wasn't angry. It was indulgent, proud, like she thought the whole thing was funny. And that's when something in me finally clicked. If she wanted to play queen of the HOA, then fine. I'd let her. But the universe, or maybe just a tired old man with a bad leg and a better sense of timing, was about to teach her a lesson in humility. I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. The world was still dark when I stepped outside. Flashlight in one hand, phone in the other. The air was sharp and quiet. And by sunrise, that shiny red Corvette wasn't sitting quite so proud anymore. The shouting started just after 7. The kind that slices through the calm morning air and pulls every curtain open on the block. "Who did this?" Karen's voice, shrill, furious, echoing off stucco walls. I grabbed my cane, took a long sip of coffee, and pulled back the blinds. There she was, standing in the middle of the street, still in her rose-covered robe, eyes wild. Her son's beloved red Corvette sat right where it always did, except now it rested neatly on 4 concrete blocks. No tires, no wheels. Just a gleaming, humiliated hunk of metal. I took my time walking outside, letting the scene play out. Neighbors had gathered in small clusters, phones out, whispering, "Guess Karma's on patrol today," someone murmured. Karen spun toward me the instant she saw me. You did this?" I raised an eyebrow. "Did what exactly?" "Call the police!" she snapped. "I did," I said evenly. "About 10 minutes ago," she pointed a trembling finger at me. "You had my son's car vandalized." "You're sick." I tilted my head slightly. "Well, considering your son's been illegally parking in a handicap spot for 3 days straight, it's almost like the universe got tired of waiting for you to teach him respect." Ryan stood by the car, hands gripping his hair. "This is bull," he started before the officer walking up cut him off. The cop looked from me to the car. "Whose vehicle is this?" Karen's hand shot up immediately. "My son's," the officer nodded slowly. "He parked in a handicap space without a permit?" There was a long, awkward silence. Finally, she muttered, "Yes, officer." He pulled out his ticket pad. "Then I'll need to issue a citation. And you'll want to call a tow. This car can't stay here." Karen's jaw clenched so tightly I could hear her teeth grind. As the tow truck backed up to the crippled Corvette, I turned to leave. My cane tapped rhythmically against the pavement. "Some people need signs," I said over my shoulder, just loud enough for her to hear. "Others need lessons." That night, the neighborhood group chat exploded. Gossip, grainy photos, and 100 theories about who stripped the wheels off Karen's precious Corvette. I sat by my window, sipping tea, watching the quiet street below. My spot, my rightful spot, was empty again. The blue lines gleamed clean under the porch light. For the first time in a week, peace had returned to the cul-de-sac. If you've ever had to stand your ground against someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them, hit like. It helps real stories get heard. Subscribe to Karen's Hub so you don't miss the next moment when karma finally catches up. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if it were your spot on the line?